Admiral, radar shows that we have liberals approaching at 3 o'clock, and libertarians at 9 o'clock, and conservatives at 6 o'clock. They're coming from every angle, every viewpoint.
Hello, Green Bay. This is Elliot, and this is Political Radar Green Bay. And I am here with my new friend, Chuck Collier. Am I saying that right?
Collier.
Collier? Say it again.
Collier.
Collier.
It's actually...
Give me a mnemonic for that.
What do you mean by that?
Teach me how to say your name.
Col. Like a collie. One of those glassy dogs.
Okay.
So, Collier.
Collier. Like you're more of a collie than any other collie.
That's, I try to imagine myself as that, as Lassie going around finding the... But actually, it's funny. The origin of the word, it's in Shakespeare, or in Romeo and Juliet in the first scene. They're calling each other colliers as an insult. Because at the time...
Yeah?
It was like a collier was someone who was like kind of the lower caste who had to go around getting the coal ashes from everybody's furnaces or
really
whatever stoves, and so they were kind of pissants.
Really?
Yeah. And it's also
I have no idea. Not only do I not know how to pronounce words, I don't know any etymology at all. I probably don't even know how to say etymology.
I didn't know mnemonics, so
yeah. I know I know very few words. If they have more than one syllable, I am ignorant. Yeah. So today, I think we're going to talk about some agriculture things, maybe some tariff things. Yeah. So before we kind of jump into that, I know you're kind of you get kind of active on our Facebook group, which is amazing. I love that. Thank you so much for that.
No worries.
So tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah. Well, I'm 27 now. For the last 4 years, I've been working as a reporter for the Denmark News out in Denmark, Wisconsin here.
So a legitimate journalist.
Yeah, it's, for a while I've looked at myself, like, try to make the distinction between a journalist and a reporter.
Yeah.
Because, I go to the village meetings, I go to the town meetings, school board and stuff like that. And it's, for a long time, I tried to make the distinction that I'm not there to interpret what's going on. I'm not there to tell people what things mean. I'm there to say what happened.
Okay.
But I'm starting to find that there's a lot of complexity that goes into certain decisions, and without having that interpretation, then there's no discussion afterward. Like if you just give people straight information, either they don't read it or they don't care. And for 4 years, I've been going to all these meetings, and almost every time, I'm the only member of the public there.
Right.
And part of it is, part of reporting is you want people to be engaged. That's the whole point of democratic rule. And I feel like a lot of people are just kind of abdicating that responsibility for whatever reason. And
to you. They're abdicating it to you.
True.
Yeah.
And so then,
And to distill down the complexity a little bit, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
I try to be engaged in these things, and it's hard for me. I don't make it to every meeting, and then when you miss things, that's the one meeting I should have gone to, right? And then. But even when you do, there's things that happen outside of the meetings that relate back that you're like, that you don't have the context of what they're speaking about necessarily. And then, of course, sometimes the individuals involved are not necessarily our best and brightest.
So forthright.
Or honest, yeah. And so they're not disclosing everything that they should be about certain decisions or discussions. So I think it is important for people like you that are super engaged like that to be able to give some additional context. Maybe not, I think what you're trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're not trying to inject your own opinions.
Correct.
But I think it is important to provide background and context. And in doing so, there's no way to not give you only know what you know, and so you're going to give certain things more weight than others because you're a human and you just can't help that. So that's the trap that people fall into when, I get it. Like I see it, and then no matter what you do, no matter what you say, someone's going to say fake news.
It's insane the amount of that kind of stuff that we get. It's like we're one of the only actual independent newspapers in the area anymore.
Right.
And like no political affiliation at all. And we'll still get that. You're anti-Trump. You're this. You're that. And I don't know. I don't really know what to do about it, other than just continue to keep going.
And ultimately, that's if nobody ever accuses you of anything, then you're probably not doing your job the best you can either. Not that you should intentionally go seek that out, right? The conflict. But I mean, if you're not ever uncovering anything, if you're not ever stirring up debate or discussion, then, that's the way I look at things. Of course, I'm a troublemaker, right? But but I think it is important to, like you said, if the discussion isn't happening, then you're not doing your job, right? So, hey, thanks for doing that. I'm constantly appalled at how little civic engagement there is, but at the local level especially. We're so fixated on these national elections and
not even the meaningful issues of them.
Right. And I know we're going to get into some of the things that do matter, but even those, like compared to some of the other local issues we end up having, like they end up being a wash. And on a local level, how much influence do we have, right? So anyway, unless there's more you wanted to say on that.
No, I think you make a good point. Like, everyone, especially today, will have some drastic, well-detailed opinion about, what's going on nationally. But, like they never touch on the meat of anything. It's all this like courtier press of whether or not or who the president brought into the bedchambers. It's I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's anything.
Did you get that?
Substantive.
Did you get that, Jacob? You got it. That's our new clip.
Yep.
That's running.
But at the same time, it's
so good.
Don't even know the process of legislation.
Yeah.
And don't even know who their alderman is.
They don't know why they'd want to know.
Yep. Or why it's important to be.
Right.
Why it's important to have opinions about political events.
Right.
I don't know. It feels really disempowering at a certain extent. And I'm sure you've.
So what do you think we can do about that?
I've been trying to figure that out. One of the big revelations I had in the last couple of years, because I did a big independent study on the First World War and the local effects or how people and how everything responded locally, and at that point in time, like 1916, 1917, especially here, it was I want to say a melting pot, because people were more or less fine with having different cultures all right next to each other. So, like, especially southern Brown County, the town of Morrison was almost completely German. It was only German language books that were taught there, German language newspapers. Obviously in Denmark we had Danes. There was Poland right next door, Luxembourg, and it wasn't like a monoculture. It wasn't. That was one of the things that people prided themselves on for being in America, was that you didn't have to conform to one thing or the other. That's what Europe was doing. That's what monarchy was imposing on them. And because of that, and because I think, too, it was a more agrarian society, so every community and every member of that community was pretty important in having people fed and taking care of people and, surviving, because their work was directly tied to the survival of the community and for the sustainability of the community. Therefore, everyone was taking a part in that. And so therefore, whatever the village board or the town board or the county was doing had a direct impact on them that they understood and that they had an inherent interest in trying to affect. And then with the First World War, I mean, across America, there was almost no public support for American involvement. But, and what there's a lot of different reasons financially why if we hadn't gone in, there would have been this huge collapse. And so in order to save that and in order to overcome the public opposition, which Wisconsin political leaders were leading the fight, it's really inspiring and disheartening to like read Bob La Follett's Free Speech in Wartime, just because he sounds like a prophet of, like consolidated power into the executive branch over everything. And it's at a critical stage right now. And so it's like you read that speech and he's like, God, everything was fine. Or not fine, but it was better then, and he was calling everything out. And I mean, it's just the trajectory since the First World War has been that mandate of Americanism and American exceptionalism. And you can never question the government, because if you do, then you're not free. And that's just merged with, I think, corporatism. And like all the basic necessities of society are, at least it seems to me, are controlled by monolithic companies that influence the policymakers, that, legally bribe them for decades, and there's nothing anybody can do. And they have hold of the press as well, and now that's even getting more consolidated.
Right.
And so I think that's part of it, is that people, our work doesn't necessarily mean anything to society anymore. It means something to the company that we work for. It doesn't provide anything for our immediate vicinity, so we only really care about ourselves. It's not, we're not organized in any way, and there's no impetus to do that. And so, I think of the concept of that disempowerment, and like that abolishment of like actual capitalism was more well known. I think community organizing and like worker organizations to influence political change at the local level and then filter that up, I think that would have a good impact on actually changing it. But people have been trying to do that since 1917.
I tend to view things. I'm with you on the presidential power thing. Of course, I think there's too much presidential power, but in general, things are so good. We live in America in really the greatest time ever, and even from a media standpoint, we have so many options. And I feel like, yes, there's consolidation, but so many people I know, and yeah, maybe that's my own little bubble, right? But so many people I know, by and large, are either super skeptical of the mainstream media, but all sides, right? Not just like not Fox News or Fox News, but like all of them, or they're just being pro more local sources or more independent sources, right? So I think like what we're doing, what you're doing, I think that there's a growth there, and I think that those are important, and I think people see that, and I think it's good, and I think that it's only going to get better. So, so when I said like, what can we do about it? What do you think about being more engaged with younger people? You're younger than me, but like, going even younger, hitting kids when they're in high school and getting them more exposed to, getting out of their own filter bubbles, because that's so easy to do now with social media.
I think obviously that's, and I've been involved in a couple organizations, or like community organizations in Denmark that have been trying to engage the kids. Like this last school year, they engaged two of the local youth groups, one from the Lutheran, one from the Catholic Church, and then different groups of students in the school to engage. Like the question was, what do you want to see in Denmark as far as new developments? Because I mean, the village really it's been growing pretty steadily the last few years. We just got a quick trip that everyone's excited about. And so
Denmark is growing up.
it is. We're getting there. But so essentially, the thrust of that initiative was to get the kids to look at their community and look at Denmark and some of the things that it doesn't have, and instead of, I want to go to Chicago or Minneapolis or that after college, it's how could I change this? And it was a really neat project and really neat experience. But I mean, as far as actual civics, it's been really difficult to try and engage on that front, because like even though there's a couple different like essay contests or like Voice of Democracy, but there's no, I guess I don't want to say anything bad about the people who put that on or the students who take part, but there's very little grounding in the actual civic process. And like the Wisconsin Newspaper Association last year did the civics games, where it's like quiz bowl, but all about the civic process. And I was actually a judge at the UWGB district of it.
Nice.
But there was no interest among the students, at least at the high school, to do that. So it's like we tried to sponsor it, but there just wasn't any interest there. And I guess it's not something I focused on too much, but maybe you can have some ideas. I'm not entirely sure how to get over that hurdle of, if there's no general interest in government and it's more about, it'd be nice to have a Buffalo Wild Wings. I don't, it's not my skill set to figure out how to merge those two.
Yeah, I mean, so I know you have some actual like topics of interest, but so just since we're kind of on this topic, I don't have any concrete ideas, but I think we all need to be focused and engaged on all of this. So even if you don't have the skill set, I don't have the skill set, but I don't think that matters. I think it's important for all of us to remember what we were like when we were that age. And yeah, maybe I wasn't super engaged then either. I don't really,
I was reading newspapers.
I mean, I feel like I was more engaged than most of them are too, right? But some of them are probably just as engaged as I am, and maybe we're the weirdos, right?
Yeah.
But so how can we get more weirdos, right? And so I want to be I don't want to be so quick to dismiss younger people.
Yeah.
I think as people, it's natural to be dismissive of people who don't have as much experience as you do.
Yeah.
And I think we need to not do that, and we need to, help bring them up a little bit along with us. So I don't know. I feel like I'm on a soapbox now, and I got to stop that. But,
well, and I guess I wasn't trying to dismiss it. It was
no, not
Yeah.
you, me, and everybody else. I just feel like we all need to check ourselves from being dismissive of young people. I think that's the most important thing. I think, what a human thing is to want to be heard, right? So, why would a kid want to be engaged in something that they feel like they're not going to be listened to anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that's missing. So, and I think, there's a lot of pieces to this, right? Like you were saying, well, there's a lot of reasons for that, so let's not even bother, right? But there's a lot of reasons, but I think it stems from we kind of treat kids like kids for too long, and we don't let them grow up fast enough in a lot of ways, right? And there's lots of reasons for that. Some valid, maybe some not so valid. I'll leave it at that. So you wanted to you mentioned some things about agriculture. And so an actual local topic of interest, right?
Yeah. Well, and I don't claim to be an expert, but So on Monday, the USDA, every year there's federal insurance called prevented plans. So if there's certain weather events, or there's a whole list of different causes that if you can't get your seeds in the field, you can be insured, and there's different levels of coverage.
And that's covered by the USDA.
Correct.
Okay.
It's so complicated. Like USDA, I think it's something like 60% of all crop insurance is subsidized in one form or another.
Okay.
So it could be people going through like Farm Mutual.
Okay.
And
But it's subsidized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all over the place. But anyway,
Yep.
so
Okay.
people who enroll in that, generally they're recorded with the USDA statistics, which I will say I like having the USDA because they track national statistics, and I think that's really beneficial. But obviously, so I'm going to go in, it just has a lot of problems. So they released the preventive plan. This year it's been rain.
Yeah.
Construction's been messed up. I mean, Green Bay, I know, has had flooded a couple times.
Right.
And so at Brown County, 22% of the corn acres that were planned. It's I forget the figure, of course. Total acreage, not divided by crop, it's like 19,000 acres were prevented from planting.
Wow.
It's pretty significant. So 22% of the corn wasn't put in the ground or was incredibly late planted. Like usually you want to get corn in like end of April, beginning of May. There were guys in the fields first week of July putting it down, just because it was so wet all year.
Wow.
And with the tariffs as well, China, or everything going on. Obviously, China, they had put a 25% tariff on soybeans last year.
Okay.
And I mean that immediately dropped the price of soybeans. I forget the figure, like 25% or something.
Yeah.
It almost 100% loss for smaller farmers, and the bigger guys, they probably suffered just as much. And so preparing for that, knowing that there really wasn't going to be a resolution on that front, a lot of these guys had planned to plant more corn, and
the weather just killed that.
Weather killed it. However, and I don't understand the USDA's logic, and they don't go through this. That's the same day. So you'd imagine every state that grows corn majorly had huge losses in this report. So you'd imagine, right, that we're going to be losing all of this that we planned on. Therefore, the prices of it would go up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same day, the USDA releases its supply and demand report, which is all about global trade and agriculture as relates to the United States, and they don't provide much justification or methodology, but they suggest that yields are going to be significantly higher than last year, years before, that it'll actually make up and cover the difference of the lost acreage.
So do you think that there's some, do you think there's a mistake, or do you think there's fraud?
I honestly don't know.
I mean, does anybody stand to benefit from making that up?
Well, and yes, because the more small farmers that, or like small to mid, that don't have income and either sell out or have to file bankruptcy because of that. Working capital across all farms is the lowest it's ever been. That was reported a month ago. The more of those guys that go under, the less diversification of power and control over the food supply that there is. And so I don't want to say that, it's this maniacal, like Sonny Perdue's in a smoke field room, like, oh, we'll get them all. But either it's, and this has been the issue trying to figure out what's going on with the Trump administration all along is it incompetence or evil genius? I don't know. And I mean, I guess it's only been a couple days, but none of the farmers I've talked to really understand the reasoning at all. And I mean, so because of that report, instead of the prices going up because of the prevent plan, or maybe staying equal because of that report, prices dropped by, per bushel it was like $3.90 or something start of Monday.
Right.
It's down to like $3.25 now.
But that hurts all of them.
Yes.
So
The smaller guys more, because the very large operations, the banks and USDA, they have a vested interest in those guys sticking around because they have so much equity. Little guys, not, who cares?
Right.
And I mean, that's, again, if you go back, like there's no way for anybody to really get out of this reliance on the same commodities and the same livestock, because there's no real demand for, let's say, locally produced tomatoes or garlic. And I know the farmers markets are fairly successful.
Right.
But to me, that's not enough.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we sell out our, like, the entire idea of, again, a kind of a democracy and like self-governance by I'm sorry.
No. So, I mean, I guess, like, it depends on what we're comparing, right? Because if you have a small farm and you are growing artisanal vegetables and you can sell those at a high markup, right? But if you have thousands of acres of land, you're not going to plant organic tomatoes. You're gonna plant corn or soybeans because it's just the masses. You can't sell that much product. You can only, it has to be, you have to use it for, we have a million uses for corn and soybeans. So, and partly because we grow so much, we found uses for them, right?
And why are we growing so much?
Well, I mean, there's lots of reasons for that, right? So how do we get off this merry-go-round? I don't know. But I mean, maybe we have to. It sounds like we do.
I feel that we do. And in the 1930s, middle of the Great Depression, Wisconsin dairy farmers were getting absolutely fleeced by the creameries and the cheese factories. And the price of milk had gone down, but the retail price went up for some reason. And who was making the actual money on that? And so instead of making more milk to just cover it, or the average herd size then was like 15. They went on strike and they organized, and not everybody was in their favor, not even their fellow dairy farmers who just wanted to go get their milk checked no matter what it was. But they were able to win price floors, they were able to win price controls, and actually in Brown County there were 3 different strikes that they did throughout 1933. And the Brown counties, as far as I can tell from newspaper reports from back then, they voluntarily closed in solidarity with the farmers, saying, we're willing to take the loss because we know everybody in the state and everybody in this industry is not doing well, and you deserve to. And I guess there's no way, the way power is set up now, for anyone to make a stand like that, especially in agriculture.
Yeah.
And I know there's a group out in western Wisconsin. It's called Dairy Together. And so they're essentially trying to start like a union of smaller family farms and first try to roll back the subsidies that go toward the concentrated operations, and to at the very least offer price protections or some incentive to make smaller, more localized production. And I mean, you could, there's cooperatives all over the place that could supply their local communities instead of, having to have Meyer and Festival and Woodman's and Cub, all of these massive supermarkets that always take in far more than they sell. And I mean, in the case of Walmart, I think it's in Indiana, they bought a dairy processing plant. And so there were a lot of farmers, because Walmart used to buy their dairy exclusively from Dean. And so when Walmart announced that deal, Dean cut all its contracts with the farmers that it was supporting. So they kind of lost out. They were kind of financially desperate. And then here comes Walmart saying, we'll give you, a nickel to the quarter that you were making before, but hey, you'll have a milk check. And so everybody goes there. And if you go look now, and this is like, it's not competitive capitalism. It's not a free market at all, because when you own production, processing, distribution, and the retail end of it, obviously it's more efficient from a business sense, but everybody along the way is making less while you have a monopoly over a certain aspect. And so you go into Walmart, they where their milk is, it's like there's at least the one on the east side, there's like 2 big coolers. 3/4 of it is all the great value, the private label Walmart, and that's 83 cents a gallon. Wait, gosh, it's 183. And then the only other brand that they carry is Kemp's at like 260 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, yeah, sure, it's available,
Right.
but and I'm not saying like Kemp's is like this bastion of, efficacy, but
Right.
it's about like supporting your fellow citizen in the fact that more people are getting paid more along that supply chain versus, I don't know, spending $1 less on something that takes it away.
So I'll just be devil's advocate on this. So I hear this a lot, and I hear this from both political parties that they want to support local family farmers. Like there's this fascination with this this idealized picture of a family farm. And I don't know why we are putting like family farms above other types of businesses. We allow other types of small businesses to go in and out of business all the time. If another business that's larger or better is able to compete more effectively, we don't care so much about that. Monopolies notwithstanding. So, your monopoly concerns about Walmart in certain markets, that is probably true. And that is something that should probably be investigated. But I guess I'm thinking about the other pieces, right? So, and I've read things about like the farmers markets, like people are like, oh, it should be local and it should, all of this. But then when you look at greenhouse gas emissions, it actually isn't helpful because the efficiency isn't there and you end up being like less green. So I don't know. Why do you think why should we support local farmers? Why is this important?
I guess the flip side of that is, why should we trust the food supply to the people who control the government? How is that? I mean, financially and business-wise, it's really efficient, but it's, I think, really offensive to human dignity and, I don't know, like just your fellow citizen. And I understand where you might have some doubts on, like, because you're right, the idea of a family farm is really idealized, and it's been going down since I think the 40s or so. Just people are leaving the rural area to go to the cities because there's more money to make there. But
I guess I just think of it as like, I'm a farmer and I have my 10 acres, I don't know, whatever, right? That's probably, even back then that probably wasn't enough, whatever, right? But, and then this other guy, I'm a shoemaker. Well, obviously making shoes, you make them in a giant factory and you have just efficiencies of scale because of machinery and, repetitive low skill labor, whatever, right? So why is that model not okay for farming?
I guess I would say with the shoe example, I think the non-factory example
Yeah.
is actually better because that's supporting the community. It's a sign of vibrance and actual expression. Where, I mean, lower wages.
But everything costs more then. A lot more, right?
Well,
Like if I had to get this, I shouldn't say that. Like this is, I spent a lot of money on this T-shirt to support my friend because this is his clothing company, right? So there are things where that is appropriate, and this is an expression. But if I was just getting a plain red T-shirt, like why should I pay some local person to make a red T-shirt rather than having it made in a commodity factory?
no, for sure.
Like what benefit do I get as a consumer?
Because so to use like the argument for defending like the Second Amendment or or freedom of speech, it's important to extend rights to others because you're only worthy. Like the second you take rights away from others, you lead the road to them being taken away for yourself. And so to look at like especially with clothing, the sweatshops that they're made in, to overlook that aspect because it's more cost efficient for yourself is, I think, just like laying the road to yourself to be in the position of a sweatshop worker. And that's what happened after NAFTA in Mexico with the farmers there. And it's exactly what's happening here now too. And agriculture in Mexico now, it's pretty akin to feudalism and serfdom, if not slavery. That why are all these people coming here to pick fruit?
Because it's worse in Mexico.
Well, there's no money to be made in Mexico.
Okay.
Because they were landholders, they were landowners, and growing food for their community. Therefore, their community was responsive to them. They were responsive to, not that it was like a bastion of democracy or real freedom beforehand, but I mean, post NAFTA has decimated that country, and as much, and it's like I give Trump credit for talking about it, or talking about NAFTA, but then to not recognize the impact that had on Mexico and how that's feeding the crisis at the southern border, and to have no compassion for those people at all. I think that's like, why would anybody have compassion for you? And why should you not be held in a detention facility for a misdemeanor? And so I guess it's more, maybe it's utopian and again, maybe romanticizing a few things. But I mean, I think the small business and a community that actually supports itself has far more identity. It might be a higher price, but it provides a lot more value, and it's through that the idealized and romanticized version of capitalism actually takes root, and people can actually support themselves, and people can actually have agency. Without that, and I mean, we get exactly where we are now, where like, sure, you can vote, but that's about it. And
voting is pretty awesome.
No, 100%. But when
mostly because everybody doesn't do it.
But isn't
so my vote counts for like 20.
But isn't voting kind of like going to Walmart and like you have great value and Kemp's, and you only have those two options,
right?
And like these Democratic debates are just it's insulting.
It is. It is. So I think I think Jacob was giving me the tap. Are we done, Jacob? Jacob's giving me a shrug. I don't know. You got any zingers for the end?
I'll say, if the Republicans want to say that the Democratic Party is socialist, they should really look at the fact that the debates are being hosted on private news networks, and CNN retained the copyright to the last one. They didn't stream it. It wasn't online. Maybe it is now, but for like a week it wasn't. and Democrats were socialists, they wouldn't work with those people at all. Let's all agree to love each other, man. Love, peace.
He's giving you so many zingers, Jacob. There's so many little teasers you can make out of this.
Let's start the zinger party.
So I think that wraps it up. I think we've committed that. I think you said that we should send Trump to. What did you say? Trump should go to where?
Guantanamo?
Yeah, something like that. He gave you tons of zingers. I just heard all sorts of little sound bites that you got there. So if you would like to go on to Facebook, we have the great Political Radar community, of which I've seen Chuck be very active. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
And you can go on there and tell him how right or wrong you feel he may be. He is able to craft a very good argument time and time again. So please feel free to engage on any of that. Please feel free to talk about it. Your thoughts on the tariffs, on all the crazy stuff we talked about today, socialism and capitalism, and how crazy you think I am. And please drop by the patreon.com/newsmakers and drop a few nickels in the bucket for my friend Jacob over there, so he doesn't have to take a nap instead of producing.
Thank you, Jacob.
And please hit the like and the subscribe, and please share with your friends. And that's really the only way that we can have a good discourse in our community and help democracy. And that's our job here. So
Can I do one plug?
Yeah, go ahead.
Contact your local newspapers. Write letters to the editor or editorials or something. Contribute, because
Very true.
we need people engaged and not just reading stuff.
Well,
if you're going to post
true.
something on Facebook, copy, paste, and send it to your newspaper as well.
Very true. I mean, I think that's true actually throughout local media, but especially the independent media, like what Chuck has and what we're doing. I think we have a thirst for engagement, and that's not just a fake news hashtag sort of thing that we're saying. Like, we really want to have everybody kind of be excited about what's going on, not what we're doing, but like about our community. So, enough said.
Thanks for listening to Political Radar. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. To stay up to date, visit politicalradar.com or connect with us on Facebook or Twitter.